Radha ji. Namaste. Salam alaikum. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Distinguished guests, speakers, implementers, collaborators, event partners, steering committee and members of Global South Coalition for Dignified Menstruation, executive committee and members of Dignified Menstruation Campaign Nepal, media, all participants who are joining here and online from around the globe, all protocol observed. Honestly, I'm overwhelmed. Despite having so many challenges, we are celebrating the 5th International Dignified Menstruation Day globally. Each of you who stand for dignified menstruation deserve huge congratulations. Let us have a big applause. As a survivor of menstrual discrimination, as a person who coined and developed the theory around dignified menstruation, and as a founder for Global South Coalition for Dignified Menstruation, I have so many stories to share. Due to time constraint, I will be very brief and straightforward. Let me begin with the description of 3 very simple and worldwide common practices. Firstly, have you ever noticed that 6-year-old boys believe that menstrual blood is disgusting or dirty? This instance implanted the seed of patriarchy unconsciously. It also embeds the idea that men are superior beings. Concurrently, 6-year-old girls learn about discriminatory menstrual practices spontaneously through the observation. A little girl knows that she will menstruate more or less 6 years later, but also considered herself as inferior or start to internalize and practices patriarchal hierarchies unconsciously. The existing silence and ignorance around menstruation strengthen patriarchal practices and impact all aspects such as politics, economics, etc. of an individual's life and societies. As a result, the menstruators get no or limited space in various levels of society. Menstruators, regardless of their location or identity, often face more violence. The home becomes a factory of violence because there is no discussion about menstrual discrimination. Menstrual discriminatory practices, including silence, is crucial in establishing unequal power relation and strengthening patriarchy. Our governments, academic institutions, activists, various projects, the UN and the partners acknowledging such fact and address them accordingly? No. Secondly, menstruators are typically compensated less than non-menstruators. Except when having babies, they often become the larger target of blame or weakness, of mood swing, illness, cramps, symptoms generally related to menstruation and menopause. Many of us blame patriarchy and forget to explore the underlying causes for unequal wages. While there are many reasons that explain unequal wages, the main cause is the absence of dignified menstrual perception and practices in the home, school, community, and workplace. This is a systemic outcome of menstrual discrimination. Do the dissent or policies, activism around human rights attempt to unveil such bitter realities? No. Thirdly, you may overlook the fact that the menstruators are not allowed to water flowers in many societies across the globe, and you may convince yourself that this is allow menstruators to rest. To me, according to the UN definition of sexual and gender-based violence that was published in 1993, this is a perfect example of emotional violence and violation of the rights of access to resources and services. I believe that many of your countries' constitutions consider this is a violation of the rights. The rights to dignity, freedom, equality, mobility, participation, and all aspects of health, including mental health, are included in this. This is a direct, visible, and symptomatic impact of discriminatory menstrual practices and coined with systemic impact of menstrual discrimination. As a human rights defender, do you think the international human rights instruments such as Human Rights Declaration 1948 or CEDAW 1979 or SDG 2030 address such discriminatory menstrual practices? No. You may disagree with me and be disappointed because I say no repeatedly. Let me briefly explain why I'm saying no. If we that the definition of menstrual discrimination is an umbrella term that includes the taboos, stigma, shame, abuses, violence, and denial of resources and services when blood is flowing from menstruators throughout the life cycle for all diversities. What are your deeds? Menstrual discrimination has been practiced across the globe with the different names, forms, and magnitude for a long time. Have you calculated the number of discriminatory menstrual perception and practices you and your community are practicing now, daily, monthly, and yearly throughout the menstruator's life cycle? And have you ever calculated the number of times and the breadth of rights of violated? Probably no. Sorry for saying no again. Menstrual blood has been deemed impure, dirty, or has made menstruators appear weak since the Vedic period, according to Aristotelian definition and in the present day. There have been various forms of discriminatory practices related to menstruation. These are typically linked to and are justified by culture, religion, or prestige. Unfortunately, it is not only associated with the silence and ignorance, but also includes taboos, shyness, stigma, restrictions, abuses, deprivation from services and resources. More importantly, it impacts throughout the life cycle of menstruators in systemic and symptomatic manner as mentioned above. The notion of dignity of the human person has been the most frequent intervention globally since 1948, but menstrual discrimination is still not acknowledged as a violation of the human rights as discussed above. Recently, the word dignity has been used in conversation about menstruation, but is not explained what it means. What are its indicators? What are the indicators or questions for health, education, infrastructure, or climate justice, and so on? Likewise, the global efforts are focused for promoting women's rights through the 𝗙cie𝗹𝗹𝗀 since 1979. Think about the many forms of menstrual discrimination you know about and how they have been addressed by 𝗙cie𝗹𝗹. Is it just or appropriate to confine and narrow down the gravity and magnitude of menstrual discrimination by discussing under traditional harmful practices? Menstrual discrimination is a form of sexual and gender-based violence and cause and effect of sexual and gender-based violence. More importantly, more than half of the population of this planet is occupied by menstruators, and menstrual discriminatory practices are widespread across the globe in visible and invisible forms in private and public sphere. They are not confined to a particular region, or religion, or ethnic group. Our coalition has encouraged 𝗙cie𝗹𝗹 committee to discuss dignified menstruation. Are you honest with yourself? Are you really exploring menstrual discrimination and its impact on people when you are having conversation around sexual and reproductive health and rights and comprehensive sexual education? Dear friends, unintentionally, sexual and reproductive health and rights overlooks and does not explore the stories of suffering and undignified condition that arise due to menstrual discrimination and does not address it accordingly. My career began with the journey of reproductive health, where I learned about anatomy and physiology of reproductive organs, menstrual management, was-related project, period poverty, and menstrual health. This has created the space to discuss menstruation, but has not succeeded to address the complex and multifaceted nature of menstrual discrimination and its systemic and symptomatic impact throughout the life cycle of the menstruators. With this mind, dignified menstruation becomes an innovative, holistic approach that addresses all forms of menstrual discrimination in all sectors and levels, because we cannot imagine life without presence of menstruators. Dignified menstruation is simply a vehicle to achieve gender equality through a gender transformative approach. It is an entrance to loosen the knots and bolts around sexual and reproductive health and rights and comprehensive sexual education. More importantly, dignified menstruation is a prerequisite for achieving more than 9 Sustainable Development Goals, including promotion of human rights, inclusive democracy, and sustained peace. I guarantee you that overcoming the climate crisis is merely possible without incorporating dignified menstruation as a cross-cutting theme. Without acknowledging the role of menstrual discrimination in the construction and socialization of unequal power, construction and the reinforcement of patriarchy by all of us, the intervention for climate justice will look like watering a sandy hill. Dear friends, let me now discuss this year's theme, Dignified menstruation is integral for ending sexual violence and child marriage. Both sexual violence and child marriage are the byproduct of menstrual discrimination. Menstruators who are informed, educated, and practice dignified menstruation have self-esteem, self-dignity, and self-confidence, and exercise their bargaining and negotiation skills at home. Their body and sexual behaviors, their body and life choices are within their control, and they choose not to engage in sexual behaviors at home, including bad thoughts. They strengthen their skills and increase their knowledge and agency if they study in a dignified, menstruation-friendly schools. They can resist being victims of sexual violence and refuse proposal for child or forced marriage without letting people know about being or menstruating in dignified manner. Self-defense training is another activity that could raise her social status temporarily but not assure her personal choices relating to her body. Here I wanted to ask you again, have you ever calculated the mental trauma, feeling of humiliation and shame of school girl menstruating? She needs to wake up at least 45 minutes earlier in the morning to manage her blood flow. Due to menstrual restrictions, she struggled due to inaccessibility to books, water, clothes, and food. If she is in school, she usually sits at the backs or on the dark side of the room, needs to be silent and support stigma, ignorance, and taboos associated with menstruation. She constantly is worried about her leaking and the ways to manage potential leaks. She fears teasing, she limits drinking, and does not join sports or any other gatherings. Thus, her life at home, at school, and in community is interrupted for 24 hours over a period of 5 days. In 1 year, she experiences 60 days of interruption due to various forms of menstrual discrimination. This is how her health, education, social, and political status are degraded. Eventually, she fails and drops out of school. She then is trapped to marry with or without consent. She consequently loses hope for education and economic opportunities and encounters various forms of sexual and gender-based violence. Recently, most of the global campaigns for ending child marriages have seen it as a consequence of poverty, gender inequality, son preference, trafficking, displacement, disaster, and pandemics. These causes are the byproduct of menstrual discrimination, though other factors are contributed. In 2022, our coalition reviewed the policies and campaign on child marriage and found that menstrual discrimination is missing as a driver about 100 years of long intervention in child marriage. This focus on providing bicycles, educational materials, scholarship, insurance, conditional cash transfer, income-generating activities for parents, training for police, faith leaders, lawyers, and parliamentarians, and investing in policies. It is unfortunate that the discussion on dignified menstruation is not part of the conversation. Intervention tend to focus on responding on child marriage and concentrating on placing the blame and responsibility on others. It is true to some extent, but without boosting their individual confidence from the age of 6 years old, no girl can say no to child marriage, and no boy could say that this is a crime and refuse to be grooms. Ending child marriage is a global priority now. Many countries have pledged to end child marriage by 2030 as a sustainable development goals. Sadly, most of the networks and organizations who are working on ending child marriage do not like to listen the long story of menstrual discrimination. If any of you are really committed to end child marriage, let us be ready to transform ourselves first and work collectively by incorporating the dignified menstruation as an innovative strategy. Dear friends, I do reiterate that the free distribution of menstrual pads or number of the toilets are not dignified menstruation but important element of it. We need to include in the suite of dignified menstruation indicators. For instance, Global South Coalition for Dignified Menstruation proposed 3P approach, which means people or menstruators, planet, and pocket for dignified menstruation-friendly product. In 2022, Coalition mapped the global menstrual movement where there was focus on either product or infrastructure or wash. It is high time to shift. To make product compatible with the dignified menstruation, we need to adopt indicators of dignified menstruation. Depending on your expertise or resources, you should not limit to work around product or infrastructure or wash. What you should remember to put the menstrual dignity at the heart of your work. I repeat here, you should not forget to put the menstrual dignity at center. I would like to remind everyone to use the menstrual dignity lens as a human right lens when working on anything related to menstruation. To do this, simply use the formula: menstrual talk, dignity first. Let's be open, transparent, honest, and learn from our past. There is no time like now to initiate the dialogue on dignified menstruation. Let's shout out collectively and lobby with the governments, the UN, and partners to change the narrative around menstruation, gender equality, and inclusion. I appeal to UN for endorsing December 8th as a Dignified Menstruation Day, which we have been promoting for the last 4 years. As many of you are aware, Goodwill Ambassador of Global South Coalition, 𝗙cie𝗹𝗹𝗀, escalated Mount Everest and Mount Manaslu to draw the attention of UN to endorse 8th December as a Dignified Menstruation Day. She is planning to climb a total 14 mountains, which are more than 8,000 meters high globally. Additionally, Coalition also handed over the appeal to the Honorable Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations, through the Nepal's Foreign Minister on October 18, 2023. I urge all governments, media, academia, donors, activists, NGOs, and everyone else who is working on menstruation, inclusion, empowerment, democracy, and climate justice, etc., to name a few, incorporate dignified menstruation as a cross-cutting theme. I hope that the resources needed to shift in research, training, revision of policies and strategies to include dignified menstruation, particularly in the Global South. Please do review your policies on gender equality and social inclusion, safeguards, human resource, finance, to include dignified menstruation as action for not only in the socio-cultural realm, but also as target to achieve economic and political outcomes. Whether you believe it or not, dignified menstruation is a milestone for the fourth wave feminism, who seeks greater gender equality by focusing gender norms and the marginalization of the women in the society. Our objective is to disrupt the discourse of human rights and development that has been existence for last 76 years. There will be a resistance to adopting dignified menstruation as a foundation for human rights. In any case, I have witnessed that the new generation will not wait for generation and generation before they can experience their menstruations with dignity. I would also like to announce that the Global South Coalition for Dignified Menstruation will be facilitating the session in World Social Forum 2024 in Kathmandu, Nepal, under the theme entitled Dignified Menstruation, Decolonization of Menstrual Movements and Reimagining Feminism, scheduled for 11:30 a.m. on February 16th, 2024. We look forward to seeing you all there. Last but not least, I do appeal to global leaders to listen the stories from Global South and exercise their leadership to correct the course of gender equality, human rights, and development. Happy 5th International Dignified Menstruation Day. Dignified menstruation is everyone's business. Dignified menstruation is everyone's business. I do thank you.